All right, good afternoon, everyone. And Madam Secretary, there's a message in the chat. I can't, it says Judge Carlos Rebolo, but is that Judge Ross, Judge Stacy Ross?
Yeah, she said she's.
Yes, it is.
Okay, hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here. I'm covering for Judge Rebolo.
Great. All right, then. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is officially 3:02 p.m. I see Major Victor London has arrived in person and not his picture. We have the Reverend Dr. Mathis Geis on. All right, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum? 1, 2.
We do have quorum, Madam Chair.
All right, then. All right, we're calling this meeting to order. As we always do, I'm going to ask you to go around and just introduce yourself. We do have people in the audience who are viewing us this afternoon. So who wants to start first?
Ella Phillips, DJJ Advisory.
Valerie Wanza, Broward Schools.
Colonel David Holmes, Broward County Sheriff's Office.
Marsha Ellison, NAACP.
Elder Geis, Faith Community.
Gordon Weeks, Public Defender's Office.
Major Victor London, Fort Lauderdale PD.
And I'm Alona Holmes, Chair and representing the NAACP also. All right, we're going to go over, as we always do, our norms. And if any other board members come on, I'll make sure that they get to self-introduce so that the audience knows who's who. I'm going to ask that you place your cell phones on vibrate or turn them off so that they do not disturb the meeting. I'm going to ask you to either raise your hand or get my attention some way so that I can recognize you, so that I can, say who the speaker is. And when we talk over each other, you'll know who's saying what. I'm going to ask that you take no longer than 3 minutes for your response or your question. But I'm not going to just totally limit you, because I want everybody to have a full understanding of what's going on. Also, I'm going to ask that you address all board members, and we haven't had this problem, but sometimes it's just a good reminder that you address them respectfully. Everybody has an opinion. You don't necessarily always have to agree with the opinion, so I appreciate that. All right, I am glad to be back, and again, I want to thank our Vice Chair, Mr. Gordon Weeks, for filling in for me twice during the year. Each time he filled in, he got a new committee or something, appointing people. So I'm back, and Gordon, thank you so much. It means a lot. I'm checking my travel schedule for next year to make sure that I don't have too many conflicts and not being here. I want to give you the chair's report. I've been sort of busy, not only doing judicial education, but learning the ins and outs of what the CAB is all about and what the chair's responsibility is. I want to report that Mr. Weeks and I did attend in October a training session that was sponsored by DJJ, and the secretary, Dr. Hall, was there, and we received some information regarding the CAB. Also, I did some, I stayed over, there was a summit, Hope Summit, and I really learned a lot. But my most important thing was sitting and talking to people who work for DJJ, finding out what they do, what their role is. It gives me a perspective for what this board is. We are an advisory board to the Secretary of the Department of Juvenile Justice, and he has appointed a liaison to this board, and that would be Chief Probation Officer Ms. Cassandra Evans. So I don't know, Chief, I'm learning And that's, I think, one of the reasons why I never sat in the juvenile division for any length of time. There's too many hands in the pot. So I will be mindful that you are the liaison, and you know, if the secretary has sent something that we need to know through you, you certainly will have the space to let us know. So thank you, and it's gonna be a rough going for the next year or so for you. Okay. There was, I just want to let you all know, when I came back, I watched the meeting where the Promise program was being discussed. And I felt that it was just too disjunctive and, you know, not really on point of what we needed to know. So I have tabled the presentation until such time as I can sort of give Ms. Tudge an outline of what the board needs to know. So that your questions will be germane, and that I will get the materials. I was getting the materials sort of like the day before the presentation. And that's not enough time for you all to digest and to read things. So I've put a time limit on it. So I will be in touch with Ms. Hudge to, you know, go over, but Promise is real important to this board. I just didn't want you all to think that we weren't going to discuss it, but I left, I mean, I turned off the meeting after it ended, more confused than ever. and all I remember was the arrest are up. So I want to make sure that we horn in on that and give it due diligence. Also, you'll find on your agendas, if you have not received them, but the secretary has sent them. We're going to talk about something that's interesting. It actually showed up yesterday. It came up. I was invited by Chief Juvenile Probation Officer Cassandra Evans to her JAC, the advisory board meeting. Very informative. She did invite me to speak, but I was so busy taking notes. You know, that's sort of getting the lay of the land. And something interesting, I don't think that she knew I was even going to agenda a mental health component to our meeting today. So it really ties in because that's big. It's a big item. Chief Evans, I may tag you a little bit when we get to that agenda item to discuss what Jack is doing. So I've been around, I've been reading, I read statutes all the time. And so I'm just happy to chair you, and we're going to move on in our meeting with our agenda. But anybody have any questions as to what I've been doing? I feel like singing that song. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere. All right, I have. Okay, so let's move on to civil citations. Is Ms. Gaynor here?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll bring her over.
Ms. Gaynor?
Yeah, give her a moment. She's just coming over.
Oh, okay. All right.
I am here.
All right, and before I move on to that report, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the recording that from October 12th as the minutes of the meeting that was held. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, move approval of the video minutes from our November meeting.
October.
I'm sorry, October meeting. Yes, October meeting.
Is there a
Second.
second? All right.
Second.
Any discussion? It's been moved by our secretary, President Ellison, and seconded. We had 2 seconds, so I'll go with the first hand I saw, and that's Dr. Wanza's hand. And she's wearing red. That red gets my attention all the time. So Dr. Wanza and also Madam President of the NAACP is also in red. So they're going to get a lot of my attention today because red draws me in. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by either raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, those minutes have been adopted as the minutes of this Circuit Advisory Board. All right, as you all recall, we had no meeting last month because it was canceled because of the hurricane. So I was basically, and I did meet with electronically, by phone, telephonically rather, with the secretary and the vice chair. And we agreed to cancel because the school board canceled. And so that would have knocked everybody out. The only people that didn't close down was the sheriff's department. So Colonel Holmes was out there waving the flag saying, I'm here, I'm here. All right, Ms. Gaynor, I'm ready for your report. I think you have some good news for us too.
Have some good news for you.
Yeah, I just saw something in the chart that you sent us that the city of Hollywood issued 11 civil citations.
Well, the city of Hollywood has issued 22 to date. And
Okay.
just so that you all are aware, the county fiscal year starts again in October 1. So the numbers you see reflected in this report will be from October 1.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's a start. Okay. All right,
Yeah.
tell us about the civil citations. I saw that. I think that's a high for Hollywood though, right?
Yes.
Right,
It is increasing. And our numbers overall have really been increasing. I want to say from last year, the fiscal year ended September, and there was 143% increase. But I know that sounds extreme, but I'll just ask you all to consider that we're looking at an increase from the COVID numbers. So they were already down very drastically. So that's just something to keep in mind. They're just creeping up to pre-pandemic numbers, but we're not there yet. But of the youth that we've received for the fiscal year, we've already received 81, 51% of which are female. The top offense remains battery. Most of those youth, 60% are Black, male and female, and we've had about 30% Hispanic and 10% white, non-Hispanic. And of the youth who have come through that time or been discharged since that time, 93% of them have been successful in the program, with 7% being unsuccessful. And we've had, which I never like to see this, but we've had since October 3 parents to decline. And just so you know, when we have a parent who is kind of like mad because the kid got in trouble, we usually try to talk to them, to explain to them, and we even refer them over to legal aid, who kind of tell them the differences between the processes and the benefits of it. But we've had 3 decline, and so what else? We've had 9 second opportunities since the beginning of the year, and that means that the youth have at some point during their before the age of 18 received a citation already. So we've had 9 receive a second citation of the 81. And when we look at law enforcement, the majority of them, well, we have 27% in this report have come from Hollywood. So they have 22 up to this point and 20 from BSO. So the law enforcement agencies are referring them. At this time, I can't really compare what's coming in to how many youth are being arrested. I think we're gonna, next meeting, we probably have a couple of months worth of missed opportunity reports so we can look at the numbers and comparisons and see what's really coming in.
Any questions of Ms. Gaynor? Yes, Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Ms. Gaynor. Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that we did in the past when civil citation was originally came into inception is that we had the call line for those parents that needed some advice or needed it to be explained what the process was really like. I think over time that has shifted directions. I want to make sure that we also have the Public Defender's Office, John James particularly, as a on-call number for you, for any parents that need to have that program explained to them, the benefits of the program. I understand legal aid is made themselves available, but given the criminal context of it, I think it would be appropriate for John James to be on your on-call list for those parents, because I would like to reduce that number. In the past, when I've spoke to parents and explained the values and the benefits, the pros and cons of civil citation, oftentimes their frustration is alleviated and they then see the benefits and they move forward with the program. So I just want to make sure that we are in that loop.
Absolutely. We can definitely, it's a document that we'll create, and we'll obviously offer it to them verbally, but we also provide them the information in their hand. If you could just provide me with the phone number, then I would absolutely make sure that that begins to happen.
Mr. Weeks, can I ask you a question on that? Rather than, because we got Mr. James on a whole lot. Can you like have a rotation of assistants in your office that can be called rather than to have him on 24-hour call? Just, I see Ms. Gerald is tuning in.
We'll have
Your chief assistants. they need to be on call. Mr. James.
Judge Holmes, you just made my Christmas list, boy. I
went to church Sunday. I got saved.
I will make sure that Mr. James is available, and he has a support in his division with the supervisors that will also make themselves available. You can use the contact number, the cell phone number that we make available through the PD's office for Mr. James, and he will provide you the contact person for the supervisor. So it will be you'll have 2 points of contact with the PD's office on that issue.
Okay.
I've already burdened down Ms. Gerald with more than enough items. I know that brought a smile to Mr. James's face, but she has a lot on her plate as it is.
But you got to remember, she's a Delta and she can do all things. But what I do want to point out is, Ms. Gaynor, you said that 4 of the civil citations came from the state attorney's office. So that means, for those who are listening in, the child was arrested needlessly, taken over to Jack for the state attorney's office to say that they should have been civil citated. I don't see Ms. Mashala, but if she's on, can we find out?
She's on now. She just moved
Okay.
over.
Can you tell us, Ms. Mashala, what municipalities or agencies accounted for the 4 that you had to civil citate out of your office, as opposed to them doing it on the street?
Madam Chair, I can, but not like instantly, because I would have to get with my diversion coordinator, Dennis Salisbury, my case filers, because they're trained to do that from the moment that they see a case that should be civil citation. So I'll have to get back with you on that. I'm gonna have to.
Like, can you prepare for future meetings? Because those are the types of questions that we're going to be asking. We want to know who's missing. Hollywood, I guess they got tired of hearing that we don't see them. Coral Springs is a low. I don't see anything. They had 1. I guess that's a start. But if you could in the future, we'd like to know what agencies are kind of missing the mark, so that when Colonel Holmes, Colonel London, or Major London go to these chiefs meetings, they can just kind of like, say, y'all doing good, but you missed this, can you look into that? So if you could in the future, prepare that for us. Yep. Any further questions of Ms. Gaynor? I'm going to save the missed opportunities report. I know y'all jumping at the bit, but this was just for the issuance of civil citation. They kind of overlap, but I want to kind of like save that discussion for last. So Ms. Gaynor will be coming back. So any further questions with regard to civil citation?
Yes,
Yeah. Go right ahead. I'm sorry, Colonel. You were
and then President Ellison.
Yes, Madam Chair and other board members. What I was going to do is I was going to reach out to Chief O'Brien with the Hollywood PD to see, what made them turn things around and head in the right direction, and make sure that we can keep them on board and heading in the right direction. I definitely, I agree with you, Madam Chair. It'd be helpful to know which agencies were involved in having their being overruled by the state's attorney's office too. Because if it's BSO, I definitely would like to know so I can address my districts. So, but I'm going to follow up with Chief O'Brien to see what changed their tune on that and make sure it stays in the right direction. No problem.
Thank you. President Ellison.
I wanted to find out, Ms. Gaynor, how you all are continuing to deal with the promise/civil citation issue in as you input into the system, and if you are still receiving, after having a child being placed into promise, if you are still receiving civil citations for the same incident. And if you are, how are you now dealing with that?
So I don't really have a clear answer. What I will say is that I do have a clear answer, but there's been some changes. I will say that we had a process put into place by which the superintendent had designated a specific person. It was requested by our attorney that we get a specific name, and that person was designated in a formal letter signed by the superintendent, and we had that in place. So whenever we would have that issue where a youth was in promise, but also referred to civil citation, we were able to notify that person via email and phone call to let them know, hey, this youth is open in promise. However, and we received the civil citation, and because it's open and promise, we can't enter it in to be compliant with our contract. They would close it, and then we would enter it. I'm not sure or not if they would open it back, but I know that they would close it, and we would be allowed to enter it. Since that time, there's been so many changes in the district that we received one email from the formal designee giving us an email designating someone else. But then at that time, that person also left the district. So what we requested is that we receive another letter signed by the superintendent formally designating another person. At this time, that has not happened. We haven't had many youth to come in under that same scenario. And before, it wasn't a ton of them, but obviously any time that happens is important. What we've done now is we've sent the information to the designated contact, and I've let him know that, hey, as of right now, you're still working for the district, you're still the designated person, and can you provide it to the other individuals?
Is that Mr. Walker? Through the chair, is that Mr. Walker?
That was the person that was designated for us. Yes.
So it went to Walker, to Watkins, and now it is, who is the person that you're sending this to?
No, we're not sending it to anyone other than Mr. Walker, because we don't have a formal designation, but we asked him to share it with it, and that person, let me get her name. That person last name is, her first name is, she's Jody Washington. Yeah. And I believe she's under Miss Hudge.
And so have you, I'm sorry, make sure you said if it came up, you sent it, but you've not gotten a response saying, hey, I'm that person. Is that what I heard?
I have a response, and Miss Washington has told me she's that person, but because we were requested to get a official designee in writing that is named by the superintendent in a letter signed by the superintendent, if that occurs, we're still going to forward it to Mr. Washington. And I've said that we understand that this new person has been designated, but we need a formal redesignation by the superintendent.
If it's okay, I don't mean to cut you off, Madam NAACP President. You want me to take that back? I'll take that back as an action item.
I understand that, Madam Chair, if I may, I understand that the superintendent has been a little bit busy, but the district has an obligation to do right by these kids. So we need to have, and I'll call her and tell her, because it's been going on for a little minute now, that part. And then I'd like to ask Dr. Wanza, if I may, Madam Chair. So she said that the promise incident gets removed or taken care of or closed. What does that mean for the student? This is the same incident, one incident, gets promise, starts to go through the process, and now somebody decides that promise isn't good enough. So the cop says, I want the kid in civil citation. The district removes it or closes it from the system. But what does that mean for the child as far as getting promise in the district? And so are they, and I guess my question is, do they continue to not be suspended and still meet all the requirements? Can they still continue in promise and get all that it's supposed to offer? And then additionally, are they double punished because now they're in this pre-arrest program for the same incident?
So I'm gonna ask if I can talk to Ms. Gaynor offline just to get the name of the student or so I can figure out, but for the grand scheme, what you're asking.
I wasn't asking for the name. I'm just saying
No, you asking for
generally policy.
generally for
We all at today.
No, so I'm gonna have to speak with Ms. Hudge and her team as they actually oversee the promise, quote unquote, administration, if you will. But I clearly understand and I respect what you're saying. A child shouldn't be punished twice for the same offense, one. And number two, what does it mean in terms of, so now the policy says that a child, I think it's 3 times throughout their lifetime in the school district, that they can be processed through promise, for lack of a better term. So if this one is removed, does it mean, if they've never had one before, do they still have 3? What does all of this mean? So if you can give me until tomorrow, because I will get with Ms. Hudge and Ms. Washington today, before I go home tonight, and kind of run it through a scenario, regardless of who the child is, run that whole scenario through.
And can you tell me because you all got policy, you all got more policies and procedures than the police, the only one I know. So my question will be, what is the district policy on these issues? And when you say you close it out, what does that mean? And as a district goes, do they still allow a promise and then they must take the civil citation? And then so if it's Colonel Holmes' deputy who decides, I just think that kid needs to have civil citation. And so promise, your district is forced to close it so that Ms. Gaynor's office can enter it. Does this kid being punished twice? And does the colonel know that this is happening within his agency? And I'm just using you as an example, Colonel. I'm just picking on you today. So, we just need to know what's going on because it doesn't seem very clear as what's going on. When we started out in this space where kids were being double punished, and we seem to have come full circle.
So I will work on getting you a written response by the close of tomorrow.
Excellent. And Chief Evans, if I can segue on to that, because of the new reporting, does that child go in double, twice under citation and then promise? Because that means, it's this kid and then the police are looking at, this kid had a citation and was in promise, and therefore we're going to watch this kid for the third one, and then we're going to be mindful and cognizant of the prison the school to prison pipeline. So it doesn't make sense to count it twice, but in terms of the reporting, how does that happen?
Madam Chair, the youth is entered into the JJIS prevention web one time.
Okay.
Each placement, the one done by Broward County Office of Civil Citation, the one done by the school board, if they're both open and closed, they both count cumulatively towards the number, right? We know statutorily there's no number, but in Broward County operationally and programmatically, we have 3. So it does count cumulatively. The way the system is currently designed, it displays on the search screen in parenthetical notations of the number. I've asked that number be removed for that very reason that you're speaking of, that people see a number and they believe that a young person has exhausted prevention options. So because the statute doesn't have a number on it. And so I know that's gone to our MIS department, but right now it does count cumulative if both of those placements are affixed to the young person's JJIS prevention record.
we gotta work on that, especially because law enforcement is moving into the schools.
Understood.
Mr. Weeks?
Ms. Gaynor had her hand up, Madam
Oh, I'm
Chair.
sorry, Ms. Gaynor,
I'll
and
yield,
then Mr. Weeks.
Madam Chair.
Okay, Ms. Gaynor, I didn't look over there. I don't know why my screen, you're over here 1 minute, you're up at top. Why are you leaving me, Ms. Gaynor? Why are you moving around?
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted. You're muted.
Just for a point of clarification, I just wanted to let you all know that we did receive another person this morning to be the designee, but we'll still wait for a formal letter.
You received it from who?
We received an email from a J, the last name Edouard, advising.
Eduardo?
Edward?
Maybe Edward, because there's no O on the end.
Yes, Edward.
So we did receive an email saying that they were that they would be the new contact, but we don't have a formal letter. So what I have directed my staff to do is to continue sending to the designee until we get a letter, just so that you all are aware.
Does it have to be a letter, Ms. Gaynor, or will the email suffice? I know in this age of technology.
We were advised by, if it was an email that came from the superintendent, but we were advised that it needed to be a designee directly from the superintendent. And we were asked for a letter, so I can go back and ask, but we were told it needs to come directly from the superintendent, and we asked for a
Dr.
formal
Wanda,
letter.
can you communicate that to?
I will see her at an event at 5 o'clock, so. And this is to replace Michael Walker, correct?
As a designate,
Okay.
for us to
Got
let
it.
them know if we received a civil citation from that a youth was also open and promised.
Okay.
Mr. Weeks?
I'll yield to Michael Bell.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Obel? Yeah.
Madam Chair, my apology for my lateness, my
Well,
tardiness.
the Cowboys do show up late, but they show up.
I knew that was gonna happen. Dr. Wanza mentioned something about a child having three, I think what it is, Doc, three.
I think it's 3.
Opportunities for a promise.
No, civil citation.
That's in the
Well,
civil citation
okay.
Agreement.
Okay.
That's 3 for that. I don't know of any limit on promise. I've never seen.
Yeah, there is.
No,
There is.
there is, and
There is.
there's going to be a presentation, not to go out of order, but at the January 24th school board workshop, there's supposed to be a presentation on promise.
Am I invited?
The workshop's open to the public.
It's 3 strikes and you're out.
So I was right with 3,
Okay,
right?
so-
Okay.
Because President Ellison, you were on that committee or board that when promise came into fruition. So it is 3.
It wasn't then, but it was at the last time it was officially dealt with. Well, they eliminated the little kids, went through 11 and 3 strikes and you're out for your entire time that you're in school.
So my I'm challenged by this because, when you think about an adolescent or a child go through multiple stages of development, and it doesn't also take in consideration that life challenges that people go through every day. Anything can make a kid act out, where they may not have been eating for a day or may not, just had a bad day with dad being absent or mom being absent. There's many reasons that can make a child react, or the child have been bullied and have been attacked multiple times and finally reacts back. I think this limitation, this 3 strikes and you out rule, it doesn't fit with when you think about true prevention efforts, right? And so I think at the end of the day, at least in the work that I see every day, I'm seeing kids who are given multiple chances. If we all be honest, I was given more than 3 chances. And thank God I became who I am today. But I was grateful for those opportunities, right? So at the end of the day, we really have to assess what we're saying to our children with these 3 strikes and you out practices, because it do not fit in our model. And that has to be clear across the board.
Mr. Weeks?
Just on a technical note, Chief Probation Officer Evans, is it a statewide issue with the 3 numbers or the numbers appearing on your JJIS website, or is it local to Broward County? And the reason why I ask is because I know that sometimes from an IT standpoint, they're not going to want to make a system-wide adjustment if it only affects one particular locality. Are other circuits also requesting that number be removed, or are other circuits requesting that a number remain? Because that will gauge the likelihood of DJJ's IT department actually making that change.
Madam Chair? May I
Yes,
respond? Okay.
yes.
So to answer the 2-parted question, one, it is JJIS is a state system. So this affects all entry portals of the department's, interface in the system. It was added in based on a statutory change, right? 2015, I believe, in when the number came into play. When the statute was amended or changed thereafter and took the number out, that was not suppressed in the system as of yet. To my knowledge, I'm unaware of any other jurisdictions or circuits that are asking for this number to be removed. So Broward County may be the only asker, but it's merited because it's no longer required in statute. So, but I have a call to make to the statewide civil citation coordinator, and I'll add that to my ask of her.
The reason I'm concerned is just so that there's clarification, because we have listeners here. The civil citation statute itself does not say 3 strikes, you're out. Each county and the players, remember we did this 1.5 years ago, we got together, the state attorney, the public defender's office, all the stakeholders, the clerk of courts, and the state attorney's office insisted upon the number 3, all right? And that's why it's in our civil citation agreement that was signed off by all the parties. So that's something Broward did, and Broward can amend its documents. There's no prohibition on the state statute that Broward can't do it, but Mr. Pryor was adamant, not to just keep letting these kids go. As far as promise is concerned, that was added, I guess, by the stakeholders there, because, that's what they can do. So what you're going to need to do, Mr. Weeks, is not necessarily a state problem. It's a circuit problem at this point. And I think that's something, and things get amended and revised all the time. Maybe you can speak to the state attorney and his designees, and they may agree that now, since it's being double counted, and that's what I am having problems with, that a child that was initially in promise, and then an officer says, I want a stricter program, and then the child gets transferred into the civil citation program, and for one offense, they threw a spitball to hit somebody, that's promise. Then the officer says, well, that's a battery, so they goes to citation. I'm just giving you a hypothetical. And then that gets counted twice in the state system. The state system being different from your agreement here in Broward County. The state is saying, we're looking at how many times this kid has had preventative action in his or her life. And so we're going to come up with this number, for instance, 3, could be 5, that's going to put this child on our radar for future residency in the Florida State penal system. Okay, that's the school to prison pipeline. That's how that gets started, looking at stats and making the determination that this child is a recidivist and therefore in need of more severe treatment. So there's a lot to digest here. My concern is on the state level with Chief Evans to they need to really rethink this, because if it were a criminal offense, it'd be double jeopardy. And the Constitution prohibits that. And so, but because it's not not being charged as a crime, they can basically do whatever they want. And I don't think it's fair to the child. Mr. Obell, you pointed it out. Sometimes, there are other issues other than a child being bad. There's mental health issues, there's drug abuse issues, there's abuse issues in the home. We don't know what these children are going through. Okay, and by no means am I a bleeding heart liberal. I don't want anybody to get that. I believe in the justice system, but I believe in being fair also. And that's not being fair to these children. Yes.
Madam Chair, I agree with everything been said so far. Maybe what we can do, the Chief Probation Officer said, it's a cumulative. Maybe it can be counted, but the two program, Promise as well as Civil Citations, can be counted separately at the state level. That way it will not be double jeopardy, because if the school board issue one and the civil citation is the other, that's 1 and 1, and they're not accumulative, because now the next one will be either 2 on one side or the other, and not 3. And if we go back, somebody said 2015, but I remember Dr. Weeks and myself and about 10 other people argued this with Tallahassee to get it from, because at that time they said only one bite at the apple. So we got a bigger apple so we can buy that at 3 times. And now it seems like they want to give it the small apple all over again. So my suggestion is that if we are going to work on something, let's work on getting a separation of counting these incidents separately in Tallahassee.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Walters. Chief
Madam
Evans.
Chair.
Yeah, I was looking at Chief Evans, so I'll take any other hands after that. Chief Evans, you want to address that?
Absolutely, to Mr. Walter's point. So in the system, there's counted by program, so civil citation, as well as Broward County. The way the statute is written, the title of that section have them grouped together. So you have 2 cups that are poured into one bucket. So on the search screen, you will see the cumulative number. But if you open up the young person's record, you'll see each individual cup that contributed to the 2. So back in that conversation that you mentioned, we also talked about the possibility of saying in Broward County 6, 3 and 3 respectively, but 6 being our total number as something that will be acceptable for a young person in our community. So that has come up. And so I did take that argument back to the department, and the way the statute is written, and I can give you the specific statute number, Judge Holmes, that has it grouped together. And that's why the 2.
It's there.
Yeah.
But that's just in the title, but it's not in the body. That's like a head note being read to a judge to stand for a proposition of law. That don't work. So,
but Madam Chair, what I want the Chief Probation Officer to understand, number one, it should be the 17th Circuit push to the representative. I really don't care what they got in the document now. It's called amendments. Let's amend the damn thing. Let's like we amend everything else.
President Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me make a correction. The stakeholders did not vote for 3 strikes and you're out. The board decided that. It was pushed very heavily by law enforcement. law enforcement said these children, which were predominantly black boys, black girls, Hispanic boys, followed by Hispanic girls, that these children were getting too many bites at the apple. Never mind if they were running in the hallway or got into a fight where it's mutual combatants and they had to defend themselves or whatever. They said these children are getting too many bites of the apple. In an attempt to save Promise, they settled with three, went back and forth on a number, and the district came up with the 3 strikes and you're out. We, the stakeholders, said absolutely not, because we understand that children have, have issues and sometimes it's not reflected in that. But I think it was a compromise, another compromise that the district made in order to not scrap it all together. And Promise was supposed to be in lieu of civil citation and arrest. So unless there was had to be a law enforcement person or there was going to be an arrest, then they thought, well, then you could move to civil citation, but only if you were just not, if Promise wasn't going to work and they were going to decide to arrest the child. So it was never meant to be double punished, because when we started, before there was punished, there was suspension, expulsion, and then there was arrest, all for the same incident. So we are going back, but not because the stakeholders agreed to that. That is what the district came up with. And unbeknownst to us, I might say, we voted no, we talked about it, we fought about it, and then the district did it anyway. And so I wanted to be clear on that. And also, I would ask Ms. Gaynor, so when these children are placed in Promise and then some law enforcement officer decides that they want the child punished more severely, and it is removed or closed from by the district and then re-entered, under what police department or what law enforcement agency does it show these formerly Promised, now civil citation children? Or how does that show? Does it show under the agency that decided it or something else?
So for our purposes, it will always show under the agency who decided it, because we don't have any prior knowledge to any Promise information. When we receive the civil citation, it's coming from a law enforcement agency. So that's how it's always recorded.
And what about Dr. Wands, at the district level, when you all are putting these Promise incidences in your system, who is it? Are you saying the district? You're saying your SIU? Who is it the system is showing that is entering this?
So it would be from the district office that it is entered, and I believe it is in Mrs. Hudge's office where it's entered into JJIS. Ms. Hudge is out of town, so I'm texting with her now to make sure I'm giving you the correct information. But
so it's not your police department. You're sure that it's not showing that you're law enforcement?
I do not believe that it is SIU, but I'm going to double check for you.
Okay, if you would, that would be great, because I want to see when Colonel Holmes's deputies look into the system and they're trying to decide whether they're going to arrest this kid. So they're looking at Promise entered by the police department. Are they looking at because I know they put in, say, lamplighters because they gave Zeta Chi $50, and they see all these entries. I would doubt very seriously that they would know the difference. They just look at all these incidents and think these children have been in trouble that many times. I would doubt very seriously there's a whole lot of training that's going on with these law enforcement agencies to be able to look into JJIS, understand what's really going on. And I say that because when this came about and they fought so hard for Promise, the chair of Margie Stoneman Douglas Commission said, I want officers on the street to be able to look at JJIS and determine based on what's there, whether they're going to arrest these children. We need this information from Promise to determine whether we're going to arrest these children or not. And that's why I'm really concerned about all the information that's being entered, because our children were never getting the benefit of the doubt when there was an incident. And we're not talking about felonies. We're talking about the juvenile behavior that we all probably did. But the way that they're being punished, and particularly Black and brown children, is returning back to the same way. And so I'm sure the numbers will bear or have and will continue to bear themselves out unless we do something. in order to help save these children. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then that may be the reason why there's that uptick by Hollywood to use citations, just get it over with. But we got to stop this. I understand bad things happen in schools, bad people are in the halls, but when we target the children like this, they don't get a fair shot. All right. So I think that's a part of what our agenda is to make sure that these children get at least a fair shot at life. And everybody, like Mr. Obell said, he got a lot of chances. And look where he is today. And I think if the truth be told, all of us got a lot of chances. Second chances, third, fourth, and fifth chances. All right, Dr. Wanza, and then Mr. Weeks.
Wait, hold on.
I just want another chance to respond to President Ellison.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead, Mr. Obell. He told me to be quiet.
No, I didn't. I thought it was next. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I wanted to.
We're coming back to you, Mr. Obell. I just wanted Dr. Wanza just to say what was on my mind.
No, I just wanted to clarify with Ms. Ellison. What I said is accurate. The staff from Ms. Hudge's office enters if a promise incident occurs, they enter it into JJIS, not our SIU department. So it is not the school district police department that's entering it. It is staff in Ms. Hudge's office.
The civil citation, you mean? The promise incidents is number one. And when the same promise incidents became a civil citation.
So when the same promise incident becomes civil citation, I will get that response for you. But just a promise incident, Ms. Hudge's staff in her office enters it into JJIS. But I will get the second question.
Thank you.
Mr. Obell?
This question is for Cassandra. Ms. Evans, when back in 2015, 16, and 17, if I can recall, there was a time where prevention program had to create JJIS numbers for kids who were just going to after school programming. Now, I guess this is a two sides look at this. One, are law enforcement able to see those? Because that's just a normal child at an after school program where a JJIS number had to be created for them to be at after school program. And then two, have they stopped that where providers have to put those kids into the system?
First question. So is the requirement, can law enforcement see young people entered in a pure prevention program, right? So after school program. Yes, they can. When they do a youth search, the name will appear. There are a couple columns, right? That hasn't changed in the system. One says prevention, one says civil citation, and one says delinquency. They can see that from the search screen. To Madam Secretary's point about the push for law enforcement to be able to see that happened when the statute changed thereafter. So that is permissible. And secondly, the requirement for programs that receive the department's funds to enter youth into the respective system still is a requirement of their contracts. So yes and yes.
So that becomes, so full transparency, that's one of the reasons why we decided not to take DJJ money, because that was a problem for us and our leadership board here.
Understood.
When you look at that, because if law enforcement was to see that's just a basic after school program where a kid can get tutoring service, mental health service, whatever the case may be. They didn't do anything bad. This is just pure after school services. If they're seeing that, and they probably can see the history of it, I'm not sure, but then that child maybe later end up getting a civil citation or prom, whatever the case may be. Now we're kind of going back, we're kind of going back through some things, and in other words, it becomes problematic. And so I think that's something we need to look at as well, because that should not apply to prevention, especially for prevention basic after school program, where you got kids from Sunland or whatever, Markham Elementary or Tedder Elementary, they're just going to a basic after school program. And now they have a JJIS number created. So I think that's something else this body should look at.
certainly probably through the legislative committee, because that capability came along with the change of the statute. But point well received.
Anyone else on this point? We've got our work cut out for us, and so we'll come up with some creative ideas, I'm pretty sure, once we get the information from what the school board is doing. I'm going to move on to the committee that Mr. Weeks formed with regard to the arrest of juveniles who can't get the civil citation for domestic batteries. And the question was asked by Secretary, Madam President Ellison, well, what happens to these children? They're not civil cited, or are they diverted? What goes on? So that committee, and it's really important because I heard some information about respite, where the children get a weekend away from their parents. So maybe that's all that's needed, but is that a part of diversion or what happened? So Mr. Weeks, fill us in. What did you and your committee find out?
Judge, I have to be very candid with everyone. I was embroiled in some stuff that was very distracting last month. And as a result, I did not have the opportunity to formally meet on that issue. I know that I have touched out to get a sense of the appetite for a diversionary type domestic violence where it involves sibling mutual combat. However, we have to further have conversations on that before we are able to bring that to fruition. My last conversation with respect to respite is that we still do not have a respite location here in Broward County. I know the county, through reports from Ms. Evans, our chief probation officer, has been actively putting out RFPs on that. I do not know where they're in the process, if they have any particular folks that are interested that they're in the process of contracting with. But we have an issue with domestic violence, particularly with respite in Broward, and I will make another commitment to the committee or to the advisory board to get together with the state attorney's office and the other stakeholders to have a conversation on trying to resolve this respite issue and try to identify another path forward for mutual combat, sibling type disturbances.
Anyone wish to be heard?
Madam Chair.
I'm listening, yes.
So the challenge with this standing concern is the lack of availability of respite services here in Broward County for all youth who qualify, right? Either be for domestic violence, other behavioral health issues. When the Covenant House chose to only serve the population of 18 and older, it has caused a complete ripple effect. And that is due to, just to remind everyone, that's due to the DCF, Florida Administrative Code, requiring some additional background screening. So I've been working closely with Don Liberta, who is my DCF administrative counterpart, Larry Ryan from ChildNet, as well as a few community providers who have expressed some interest in providing this service in the community. Broward County has provided funding for many years in this service and will continue to fund the Covenant House. And so funding, of course, will be something that we have to tackle as well. The rate per kid in this type of placement is about, I'm just going to average off to be about $300 a day. The placement of such facility is not in my backyard. So the one program who is demonstrating interest, the facility is looked to be on the campus of South Florida State Hospital, because that is, just where folks are used to having folks there who are challenging. We know that will present some other problems. So the efforts continue. We meet with Judge Williams about every 4 to 6 weeks on this topic. We just met on on yesterday, and we have another meeting scheduled for January the 10th, I believe it is, or the 17th is one of those. It's the 10th. So that's kind of where we are. One of the questions that Judge Williams has asked is, where is the support, the political will, and also the support? And so he asked who was the commissioner appointee for Broward County to this board so we could get some momentum behind it. And we just found out yesterday afternoon in that meeting that Robert McKenzie has been appointed to be our representative on this CAB. So hopefully that'll galvanize some things. So that's kind of where we are. It is truly, to Mr. Weeks' point, at a standstill, because whatever programmatically we come up with, we have no respite to placement. The limited respite services that we have at Littman House is primarily for young people who are misdemeanor level, very short term, and not complex mental health or behavioral health needs, which are not primarily the young people who we're talking about here. So that's the fill-in for the other pieces Mr. Weeks spoke on.
It's a challenge. Yes, Mr. Weeks.
Just to follow up with Ms. Evans's points, we have a meeting scheduled in January, very early in January, to discuss this, but there has been some brainstorming on this idea, and there is a very fruitful avenue to pursue. I won't bore all you with all the details because it's in the brainstorming stage, but it's to piggyback on something that's already been done, happening with the Department of Children and Family Services, and to tap into their resources without having to build a whole new tent. The problem with that is when you have DJJ linking into DCF, it becomes, very, very complicated. So we got to have everybody sit down, dissect it, make sure that it's programmatically appropriate for DJJ and DCF, and then see if the idea will grow. It is a promising idea, but it's very, very early, and I would like to flesh it out before we start making announcements that we solve this issue, because we haven't solved it, but we got a good idea.
All right. Well, we look forward to I'll agenda it for the our January meeting. I'm not sure you all can get together, but the holidays are coming, but maybe a Zoom to at least get started on it, because that is a major concern. These kids who otherwise are pretty good, but they fight their brothers and sisters. And I have a disclosure to make to you all. The truth be told, and but for the grace of God, I never would have been a judge if I had been based on the qualification that I never fought with my sister. We would break up my mama's furniture and her good lamps, and then she would come home and take care of us for that. We didn't become friends until we were in our 30s. That's how contentious it was. So I understand that. Now, there's a tendency we lump everything, and Mr. Weeks has been advocating, look at the circumstance of the battery. Yes, it's domestic, they live in the same house, but we got to come up with some avenue, because they can't get citation. There's no promise. Basically, I don't know what the schools, what do schools do when there's a fight in school? Is that promise or citation or take them to jail?
Well, so depending on the nature of the fight, most of them either go through some kind of promise incident or according to the discipline matrix, some type of school discipline. But sometimes there are, fights that become so overwhelming that an officer may decide to do a citation or an arrest. We had one at a high school last week where it was 14, 15 students. Pepper spray had to be dispersed. I'm not sure if any students were citation or arrested, but typically the schools start to follow the discipline matrix, and depending on the severity of the fight, it could result in a promise incident more so than an arrest.
It all depends on what school as well. What our police officer shows up there is a big part of it. And then as far as promise goes, it depends if a kid is hurt, somebody's hurt, somebody bleeding, then that's not going to be promised.
No, it depends on the age.
If you at Crow Springs, no matter what, it ain't gonna be promised. If you at Coconut Creek, it don't matter. You ain't gonna get promised. So it depends on where you are, Judge.
And a lot of times too, whether there's weapons used or not.
Right.
Officers look at that immediately upon their arrival on scene. So the injuries, the weapons, if there are weapons used, what type of injuries, those are all the things that they look at.
Whew. Well, things are different. They used to paddle us, the principal. So, but I never fought in school.
That's what the sheriff is threatening to do in Broward County.
Yeah, I only fought my sister at home. I ain't fighting school. All right, well, we'll work on that. Mr. Weeks, thank you for undertaking that issue. It is something that is very important, and we got to come up with solutions. This is now the time for innovation, because things have changed. The Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission has changed a lot of things, the way things used to be done in the past in schools. But there's still ways for our students to go to school, our children to go to school and get educated, still be safe, but have fun as children. And little things will happen when you're playing around in school and things happen. So we'll try to work on that. All right, I'd like to go now to missed opportunities. Ms. Gaynor is back again, and this is Colonel Holmes's favorite part of the agenda. Ms. Gaynor, who didn't issue the citations?
So I think Colonel Holmes will be extremely happy because I don't have the October or November report today. So I have no information for you.
Okay, gotcha.
But you're hoping
the numbers were zero, right? For BSO, right? The numbers were zero, you recall, right? Okay.
Well, yeah, that's in the past, but we we don't know what happened in the new fiscal year. I guess we'll get that in January, and I'm hoping that it is zero. Major London, you still maintain that you have zero?
Yeah, the compensation still exists.
All right, well, we'll get that report, Ms. Gaynor, in January. But thank you. If I haven't said it before, thank you for all your hard work. But you know all the questions that come as a result of when we get these breakdowns of who's not doing what we're asking them to do. And because 985.12 is a statute, what they should be doing. So we have selective enforcement by certain agencies that we got to really look into. I'd like to go into something that has become near and dear to my heart. I traveled and I had a conversation with a couple of judges from California, and they have a juvenile mental health court. And so I started asking them, okay, how does that work? So listen very carefully, Judge Ross, because I was going to, put Judge Robolo in the chair, but we got you. So I know you can't come on camera, so I can't see you making faces at me, but I can tell from your voice in a few minutes. But last month, the Miami Herald published a story. And I normally, I take it with a grain of salt because it's in the newspaper. But they did some accurate reporting. In 2020, the legislature passed House Bill 945. And if you need a copy of it, I can email you all copies. It became law July 1st, 2020. And basically, it covers a 2-year time period. And that's the problem I have with these unfunded legislative things or limited funding. But it calls for alternatives to Baker acting a child. And it was just very fortuitous yesterday that I was able to attend the JAC meeting where there was discussion on 945. So I'm going to sort of rely on Chief Evans to give you kind of like a brief overview And I've read the statute. I read it twice last night. But the fact of the matter is that in the last year, the last school year, coming out of the pandemic, DJJ, who was the reporting body, reported 5,077 incidents of students being involuntarily committed under the Baker Act. Y'all write that down. These aren't the winning lottery numbers. 5,077. These, before the statute passed, we could not get those numbers. And the NAACP was really working diligently to get the numbers, especially for Broward County, because the Southern Poverty Law Center filed a lawsuit for the number of Baker Acts that were in Palm Beach County. They were able to get some records. We were not able to obtain records, but and I don't know why, because we were doing this in 2021 when the data collection was supposed to be underway. You know, I'm going to leave that, but there is a need. If 5,077 children in 1 year get Baker Acted, we got a problem in our schools. Okay, so Chief, tell me what the mobile unit and this prevented putting them in the 72-hour hold facility. Tell me what I think it was Broward Behavioral Health was in charge of that. All right, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation that BBHC, Broward Behavioral Health Coalition, prepared.
We don't need that PowerPoint. You can't read it. It's too small. I'm gonna get with them on the lettering.
Okay.
Supposed
So
to be no less than 24 points.
Absolutely. So I'll just share it out so you can expand to your vision needs. But what I would say, so when House Bill 945 passed, it required all the child serving agencies to pull together under the managing entity to address the continuum of care for behavioral health services. And in that, we've absolutely discovered that the high utilizers of Baker Acts is of concern. And so we've been working for the last year and a half in various work groups to kind of see what's happening. But to the point of Baker Acts, there's a very specific work group going on that is unpackaging the multiple users, the breakdown from being Baker Acted from the primary referral source being the school board and what happens thereafter, to the breakdown post-discharge where the necessary supports are not in place, or the wrong type of supports are put in place until the child just continues to return to the Baker Act facility. So a lot of work has gone around establishing community-based action teams, trauma-focused teams, various steps to intervene from going back into an institution. What we've also discovered in 945 is the misuse and the overuse of a SIP placement, a state inpatient psychiatric facility, just because there's nowhere else for the kid to go. So we having these two options on the table, which is insufficient for the complexities of the cases that we have presented to us in this day and age. So that's a stakeholder group that continues to meet on that. So with this statute, Broward Behavioral Health then said, okay, well, what can we do with the monies that we have to better serve? So again, they have procured additional community-based teams. They've also added an additional mobile response team, which was previously known as the YES team under Henderson, typically known only to be called when the child is threatening suicide, to do harm by suicide or actually by homicide, so which leads to a Baker Act. Significant, that means they can be more responsive out in the community. And we learned about some options for Baker mobile response teams about 5 or 6 years ago. So they've actually funded an additional team to go out into the community. So more resources out in the community. The challenge that we're still having, I would say through 945, is getting the word out of how do we access the appropriate level of care, the appropriate type of behavioral health or mental health care or case management care before we call 911. Right? We have a belief that you call 911, the police will come and make it all better. We know that the police have pretty much two tools in their toolbox, a hammer and a flathead screwdriver. Either you're going to get arrested or they're going to perhaps give you a warning. So calling the police is really not the best. So with this, you also have 988, which was the national number for suicide prevention. So now that's become the mental health number. So they're trying to get that up and running 24/7. So as we try to shift from law enforcement intervention to behavioral health needs, as we try to shore up our resources in the community, so we have a stronger continuum of care, we also need to market and begin to utilize the 988 number in lieu of the 911 number to begin to access services directly. And again, the mobile response team, I think, is just going to help out across the board. I can say also that Children's Services Council and the integrated data system, along with Deerfield Community Cares, is looking at the repeat offenders, not repeat offenders, the chronic users of the Baker Act facilities and what we can unpackage from there, from that deep data dive, and what we can do to better serve those populations. So that's in a high level. So again, better services, earlier intervention, more thorough discharge plans, and our conversion from 911 for mental health needs to 988. It's kind of what we touched on. And again, we meet monthly to discuss our system of care, and probably will do so even as our 2-year mark ends. So did I miss anything, Madam Chair? Anything else you want to add?
No, and as I said, my problem is it was only funded for 2 years. So Mr. Weeks, did you know about it?
No, I was not aware of it, but I wanted to share some information that I learned by participating in another committee that was looking at this very issue as well. Some years back, the then acting Secretary of the Department of Children and Family Services, who is responsible for this whole Baker Act area, was very open to sharing data. And that data revealed that there was a disproportionate number of Baker Acts coming out of certain zip codes, predominantly zip codes of people of color. And if you dug a little bit deeper into that data, you would then find that when folks were called out and Baker Acts were actually initiated, where someone was taken into custody and been, involuntarily hospitalized, those instances were also disproportionately impacting communities of color. This is a real issue. And I know some of the feedback from that then since Secretary wanted to address the training around the people that were going out and responding to these calls and making the determination as to whether someone's a risk themselves or other, or following up on investigations, things of that sort. It is a real concern, is a real issue. Not only the numbers high, but the numbers may be skewing to particular communities. And they only get that information if you dig deeper and deeper and deeper and start to unravel the layers. And then you start to see how what we have advocated for throughout the course of time is to move away from having law enforcement be used in situations that they do not ordinarily have all of the tools to address issues, and to be more mindful of rehabilitative issues like civil citation and promise to address the whole child and oftentimes the family. So we've swung in that pendulum towards that area. And then what we found is that folks are then using law enforcement and or the Baker Act system to supplement what they would already have been doing with the rest. So the same group or numbers may be contacting the system, they're just going into different slots in the system. Some may be going to Baker Act, some are going to juvenile justice, some are being expelled from school. And we find ourselves playing whack-a-mole. We focus on one system, which is arrests. We have a reduction in arrests, and then we look over and then we have an increase in Baker Acts, or we'll have an increase in suspensions and expulsions. We have to recognize these are whole issues across the community, children's issues across the community. And if we don't address them as a whole systematic problem, then we're never going to accomplish the goal, which is to be better and more supportive of our children so they can have opportunities to be productive in society.
Well, I will say this, the legislature, there was a bill introduced last year to try to answer some of those issues, like number one, notifying the parents. I think I reported that a lot of parents would call the police because their children didn't come home from school, only to find out that they had been Baker acted. Okay, Judge Williams mentioned when he was on this board that children were getting Baker acted coming out of his courtroom. Okay, so that bill was to address that. Another part of that bill was to not have law enforcement transport the children to facilities, but have other entities do the transport. That bill never made it out of committee. One of the sponsors of that bill was Fentress Driscoll, who is now the minority leader. So maybe we can talk to her and have her try to resurrect that bill. There was a second, Mr. Walters, I think that you had something? Okay, the floor is yours.
Yes, with Dr. Weeks there, he did most of the things that I was going to say, because it all goes back when we were dealing with the disproportionate minority contact, where this committee, along with its chair, put a lot of pressure on the policing community to make a difference in how especially our young black male was being treated. And a lot of stuff we talk about today comes from the suggestion of that committee. I think, Mr. Weeks, we need to now find out who is making the referrals from the school system. Because if all these referrals is coming from the school system, there is a problem. And I like to know among those that is on the school board, how can we get the demographics on who, number one, is making a referral, and two, who is being referred and for what reason.
Dr. Wanzik, is that available? I mean, if the school is collecting, I know before last year, they didn't have an obligation to collect it.
So I do know that children are being Baker acted. I mean, that's an obvious, and I will see how the data is archived and how it can be requested. I certainly heard what Mr. Walters said. I was writing as he spoke. So I will, I have 3 items so far to take back, and I will add, ensure that that's a part of the request. I've already set up a meeting for 8:30 in the morning.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
All right. Madam President Ellison, was your hand up? Okay. Colonel Holmes.
Yeah.
Colonel Holmes.
Yes, Madam Chair. One of the things that we've done this past year with the Broward County Sheriff's Office, just adding to what Gordon Weeks stated, was we hired mental health technicians to be deployed to certain types of calls where people are suffering mental breakdowns, psychotic episodes, because these mental health clinicians are experts in that field. And some of our deputies, whether you have training or not, are not equipped to properly handle these situations. And we've seen so far that unnecessary Baker Acts have dropped. And we also feel as though that the people that are in need of specialized treatment, under the direction of these mental health technicians who are properly trained, are getting the right treatment, and is preventing these individuals by just being taken to the wrong facilities. So, and I can't speak on behalf of other agencies, but I know here at the Sheriff's Office, the Sheriff was really on top of this. And we're looking at hiring more in the next year or two as well. So that's the way law enforcement is going. And I tell you, those agencies that's not on board with this are going to suffer some serious issues if they don't catch up.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
Okay, I did have a question. I what we found pre COVID was that when children specifically were from the schools, were Baker Act from the schools, there was no coordination of care, meaning the kid got taken to wherever they were taken. If the numbers were high, they were taken as far as Miami and sometimes to Palm Beach County. But the families needed to know, because folk don't see it coming. They got stuff going on in kids. So there was nothing that when the child was released, or I know they said they had the YES programs, but when the kid gets released, where do the parents go for help? If there was no connection of, so my kid was Baker Act, what does that mean? How do I help my child? They're going to be in school during the day. Do people know? How do I get them help? That sort of thing. So does the district have in place something that when a child is Baker Acted from your schools, that the parents are alerted, not only that it happened, but that, next steps, they went here, how do they get help? What are the resources that a child, particularly when it comes to, children who are certainly suicidal, and parents they didn't see it coming. It could be a sexual orientation thing. It could be a bullying thing, could be a lot of things. Where do you all serve as a resource in real time for parents from the moment the child is taken to the facility? And if let's say they're going to be a 72-hour hold, what do the parents do as far as to connect those children when they are released?
So
Dr. Wanza and then Chief Evans.
All right. So every school does have, I'm going to call, in the days that I knew it, it was a suicide prevention, suicide care coordinator, right? And what that person's responsibility is to do exactly what you are saying, Secretary President Ellison. So, and each school, it's supposed to be listed who that person is, what the phone number. Typically, when a child is Baker Acted, some type of SEDNet referral comes back to either back to the district. We have a SEDNet coordinator, and don't forgive me if I can't remember what SEDNet stands for. I will certainly find out, to begin to do those things that you are speaking of. So we've had some transition in individuals and departments and where people line up. So that will certainly be a part of the conversation. As I said, I have a follow-up with certain people today from this conversation. So I will ask that flow chart, who that is, so that it is shared with this body as well, so that the questions, when people have those questions, they readily have the answers.
Is there something, if I may, Madam Chair? I know you all were really big on posters. Something happened, suicide prevention, let's do a poster. There's this going on, let's throw up a poster. What is the procedure? So that if I went to Board Anderson on my way home, I went in the office, there'd be something that somebody there could tell me, this is where a parent should go. It is Ms. Smith, and she can tell you what it is that you need to know. Is it really, I know it's on paper, but in real time, does that really help us get the parents get the help that they need?
So there should be some flyers available for, if you need help, call this number kind of thing, to what you're saying. And so I will find out from our student services team, particularly the mental health services unit, how those documents are now being disseminated to schools. Also, there's a lot of things on websites, and I get it. People don't have time to necessarily go to a website and look for something, but if there's a brochure at the front office that I can have in my hand as I'm there to read, to go through, to ask questions, that probably is very helpful for a large percentage of our population.
Okay, I would hope so, because we used to have meetings at Fort Lauderdale, and we went to meetings there. We went to Plantation. I ain't seen a poster yet.
Okay.
Of any of those things. So, I'm sure that it was delivered to the school, but actually the implementation, the resources were not readily available to the places that we would move around to. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Ella.
Chief Evans?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say to Colonel Holmes's point, what you described is one of the best practices that law enforcement that you all don't tackle the behavioral health needs of a citizen while you're trying to also contemplate public safety and arrest. So when we went with the mobile response team and we went to a national conversation about this, that was really the best formula, that you go out in pair. Secondly, I will encourage all law enforcement, agencies to make sure that young people who have autism and on the spectrum, I know they have a designation, that we really attend to that, because their response to high levels of crises results in very, concerning behavior to say a law enforcement officer. So I just want to make sure that we continue to stay on that effort as well. And then to Secretary Ellison's point regarding the gap between my child has been Baker Act and what do I do as a parent, that was part of 945 as well, right? And trying to, put that care coordination team in place. And so a family doesn't have to search in the midst of their crisis for resources, that the resources come to them and avail themselves and the right resources, right? So there's no need for me to send a program that is not culturally responsive, that does not meet the whole family needs. And so that's the other piece of 945 that we're trying to tackle as well. So, but when you see the report, the PowerPoint, it may step it out a little bit more for you. But if not, let me know, Secretary Ellison, and I will ask BBHC to give me some more information for you.
I may invite them on, but he's got to correct those PowerPoints. Yeah, he really does. You can't see it.
Okay.
So this is my segue to Judge Ross. Can you hear me? Judge Ross? Judge Ross? All right, look, this is my thing. For misdemeanors, we had Judge Lerner in. Is she still there doing the misdemeanor court for, but that's for adults. For felonies, we got Judge Porth. I think now it's time for Broward to think about a mental health court for juveniles.
I'm here, Judge.
Okay, can you hear?
I'm
hear
sorry.
me? Because the needs of juveniles are different, and I know y'all are swamped and you're busy, but the judges in California, they have a mighty caseload, but they were able to carve out. One judge just took 2 days out of his schedule, and that was like the mental health court for juveniles, because and you had people who specialize in juvenile mental health and things like that. And that cut down on recidivism. It cut down on the missing court dates. They were doing better in school. So is that something that the judiciary and the stakeholders for the 17th can look into?
Absolutely, Judge. And I couldn't agree with you more. Every point that Chief Cassandra Evans just made, I think is so important, because I have these families that come into my courtroom and they have children with significant mental health needs. And when I ask them about the Baker Act process, I said, well, was your child released with, instructions, medication, and follow-up appointment? And they tell me no. And, we have such a crisis in the 17th with just getting psychological evaluations ordered. We don't have enough doctors to do them. In order to get them done outside court projects, there's not doctors in the community. We have children waiting months to get in to see a psychiatrist.
Yeah, but nobody wants to work for $150.
And that's the problem.
It puts your professional license on the line.
Yes, ma'am. You're 100% right. But I do agree with you wholeheartedly that a mental health court for juveniles would be an excellent idea. I support it fully. I'm sure the other judges would too, because it would be wonderful to have the community care providers in one place, everyone on the same team, have a designated wraparound services in court to provide support to these families and children. So I definitely think it would be something that we really should have.
Now, Judge Rabolo is on the board representing the 17th, but you're sitting in his seat today. Would you be willing to discuss that with Judge Tudor and get Mr. Pryor and Mr. Weeks in on your discussions because I know it's a manpower thing, but you know what? Everything gets accomplished when everybody agrees that there's a problem and it has to be solved. And for too long, the courts here in Broward have sat on the sidelines and let everybody else. But sometimes when a judge is overseeing things, people do things.
I agree with you. And Mr. Weeks will tell you, I'm a big fan of specialty courts. I know we were just talking about the domestic violence cases. I think there should be a juvenile domestic violence court because DV is learned behavior. In some cases, these children are just experiencing a lot of trauma and they're acting out. And then in some cases, it's just, as we mentioned, siblings fighting, which is very typical. And I think that you have to figure out what is behind the DV cases as well as what's behind the mental health. And I think that those kind of specialty courts in juvenile, our kids deserve that extra attention. And I would definitely be happy to spearhead that.
Excellent. Excellent. Whatever you can do, Judge Ross, I know you'll do it. Sometimes I have to talk Carlos into it. It's a good idea, Carlos. Okay. but I know, but the time is right. And like I said, the legislation that was passed is only a 2-year thing for 2021 and 21-22. So that's when I heard one of the providers from Broward Behavioral Health say, well, we got enough funding for this year. All right. And so that's sad because just today, I don't know if you all know the dancer, his name was Stephen Twitch.
Yes.
Boss, he committed suicide. And so, I don't know what the pandemic did to the psyche of people, but it has affected everyone, but our children especially. I've sat down and had lunch with teachers who said that the kids are different than they were before the pandemic. So I don't know if it was the isolation, and Zoom didn't work because most of them kept their cameras off, so they didn't know who was on. But Judge Ross, if you would, just tell Judge Robolo what I'm suggesting. I can't mandate you all to do it, but I would prefer me not calling Judge Tudor off the cuff. I would just leave it in the responsible hands of you all to at least start talking, okay? And maybe Judge Porth could do a half a day. I'm not telling you to solve the world's problems, but I think if there's an outlet for juveniles, and we got to stop treating them like little adults. They don't think like adults. They don't, they hear differently. Those of you who have children, you can tell them to do something and 5 minutes later, they're doing something else. It's different, okay? I am noticing that with my nieces and nephews, that I go, try to spend a day with them, and I cry out to God, get me out of here before. So I see, I'm looking at it. So that's why they're committing the crimes that they're committing. It's different for them. They're not processing like we do. So Judge Ross, if you'll do that, and maybe in January you can, you and or Judge Robolo can do a report as to the reception to that idea. I'll be more than happy to send you some information that I've got from the judges I'm just sitting at lunch at the National Judicial College, and they asked if we had a juvenile court. I don't know of any courts on this in South Florida that deal with juvenile mental health. If I'm wrong, y'all correct me, but I did a search. I wanted to see who else was doing it. So Broward could be the model. All right. So y'all put your heads together the same way we came up with the mental health courts for misdemeanor and for adults. Let's do that in the 17th for the children. All right. Yes, Mr. Weeks.
Judge, I think there's definitely a template for it. We have already identified the need for it. That's why we have an attorney specializing in juvenile mental health to handle that particular caseload. But to have all of the resources in court, there have been a number of cases that have had significant issues of getting placement, getting into the right facility, that's lingered in the detention center, that has lingered in the community, that have become issues for, in the media because they weren't placed appropriately, that were clearly mental health related issues. So to have a court focus only on those issues and then put some pressure on DJJ to get them placed properly or quickly, or DCF to get them into their appropriate placement would be helpful, because oftentimes it's not that we haven't identified it on the court level. It's just you're waiting for the bed space to become available to get the child their treatment to stabilize. And that is a real problem because many of these children are in the community. And then what we find is they're out picking up new charges, and then they go deeper and deeper into the system. And then their mental health issues take the back burner because boom, they pick up that one serious case. And now you have to deal with the one serious case.
All right, well, we've got, what was that, 18 minutes to tackle the rest of our exchange. So Judge Ross, thank you again. And I look forward to hearing from the 17th. Let's move on to the Juvenile Detention Center. Is there good news on that front?
Madam Chair, good news report. There's no COVID cases, no monkeypox, and nothing floating around in the facility at this point. Right now, earlier today, I did a check. We have a total of 84 youth on some form of detention status. 58 of those youth are in secure detention, with the remaining 26 youth being in the community on some form of supervised release.
How many are in detention?
58. 58 secure detention, 26 being on supervised release, which is home detention, intensive home detention, or electronic monitoring. There are 54 males and 3 females in the facility. A ask, a need, a desire, hopefully not a order to follow was made to the department yesterday through the public defender's office, Mr. James, and echoed and confirmed by Ms. Michelle about the young people who are in custody returning to court in person. I did inform the major of the request and to look towards the beginning of the year to resume that process. And so he has it on his to-do list. And
but remember, Mr. James says that for those judges that are not taking off for the holidays, he wants those that are in detention as soon as possible.
Yes, so, sooner rather than later. I think it's,
you got it.
It's how he termed it. Yes, I did express that as well as I relayed the message. So that's it for the report on the detention piece.
Any questions of Chief? Yes, Mr. Weeks.
If you would allow me, Madam Chair, to jump in on the update on the detention center committee. We are continuing to monitor that. We've had a number of conversations with the department and the secretary, and I'm very happy to report that there seems to be some movement on that front. Can't get into the details of the movement until we see it actually materialize and the budgetary process, but we are crossing our fingers and hoping that Broward County is in line to receive some resources to address our detention center and possibly get a new detention center in this community.
Excellent. You know, this is the season for miracles, and I want to report that yesterday I witnessed a miracle, that Mr. James made the ask to have his clients brought to court, and Ms. Mashala, she says, I'm backing him 100%. I wrote it down and I circled it. She says, I'm backing him 100% to get those children in the court. I agree with him. And I'm saying, thank you, Lord. Thank you. If we can only do that on some of those issues of the citations and all that. Okay, but thank you, Lord, for the miracle. Thank you, Ms. Mashala, for assisting Mr. James in that ask, because that is important. All right. Going to the Broward County Jail, how many children we have in there? COVID, monkeypox, and they did change the name of it. They call it Mpox.
Yeah. All right, in our overall jail, this is the information that I have was up to December 7th, which was last Wednesday. The overall
Nobody's
jail,
counting this. This is the 14th. That's a week ago.
yeah, the way that they have it broken up down over at the jail, it's usually a week ahead of our meetings.
Okay.
Yep, but it's still a month block, but it's always a week ahead.
Okay.
The overall population of that date was 3,556, which was 82.1% capacity. At that time, there were only 2 positive cases of COVID. All right. When we looked at the juveniles, we had a total of 6 in custody, 5 male, 1 female. The 5 males were at the Paul Ryan, the 1 female is at the North Broward Bureau. None of them have COVID. They're all negative for COVID. They all are wearing a mask still. That policy is strictly enforced. And all our COVID-19 protocols are in place, and they're all receiving educational assignments from the instructors. So knock on wood, no issues.
Okay, I'm gonna come in a minute. Okay.
Okay. And Colonel London, you got any juveniles in your jail that you may have overlooked? I call you Colonel, but it's Major. No juveniles. I can't hear you. I'd love to hear your voice. You take great pride in saying we got none. All right. Any questions of either Colonel Holmes or Major London?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if the Colonel could give an update on how the process continues to work with juveniles who may be brought to the detention center and the stopgap that he put into place.
All right. Colonel Holmes, you prepared for that?
Yeah, so far it's been good. We haven't had any issues with our staff having to step in to issue any citations. So far, our deputies, I haven't received any report from any other agencies either. There's been any issues since that one last time. I guess a couple months ago, we had an incident. If I hear something, I always step in and make sure that our command is fully aware, and we address it with that squad and that deputy to make sure they're fully aware. But I haven't heard of any. I haven't been received reports of any issues since then.
And Major London?
No issues, ma'am.
No juveniles taken to your jails?
No, ma'am, we don't process juveniles at the jail.
Okay. I don't know what y'all do over there. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's down. Y'all tricky over there, so we have to ask.
Yeah, they just handle
it. So I'll put it on record as often as you like.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go to, is there any thing with regard to the legislative update, Mr. Weeks, real quick? I know I skipped over the Zero Tolerance Committee, and that's just an update. I'll get that in a minute.
Madam Chair, I rolled my legislative update into the discussion about the detention center. That's the legislative update that I'm monitoring for this legislative session that regards to juvenile.
All right, updates on zero tolerance. Who's on that committee? And what does that committee do? Secretary Ellison, what's the Zero Tolerance Committee? You're on mute.
That's a lot of what we were talking about earlier. I don't think that we have assigned a committee or chair people to that.
Okay. What about Chief Evans? I know we kind of got your updates from yesterday, but anything else that we need to know about from the Department of Juvenile Justice Probation side?
The only thing I add, it kind of ties into the good of the order, is that the Angel Book Drive is taking place, and we have an office here on Commercial Boulevard, and 31st, right here behind.
In Stewart, Florida.
In Stewart, Florida. Yes, zip code 33309 though, right? So so if you have any age appropriate books for young people between the school ages of 7th to 10th grade, again, these are not your romance novels that you're finished reading. These are, again, child appropriate material. Please feel free to stop by our office and drop them off. And we will, of course, then donate them to our detention facility as well as to our residential commitment program.
Right. Anything else for the good of the order?
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
Bill.
could I ask Madam Cassandra Evans to send that out via email so we can reach out to our various organizations to get those books and the deadline for the book drive?
She has sent it out. We'll send it out.
address?
She did. I'll send it out.
She sent it out, but did they update the address? They have the address of 3201 Commercial Boulevard. They have the suite number, and I know that plaza, but they said it's in Stewart, Florida.
Yeah, so you are right here in the city of Fort Lauderdale / Oakland Park. So come on over. I don't think they updated the address on the statewide flyer, but everything beside the city is correct.
But y'all get some books to the activity.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if you
ma'am.
allow Andrea Knowles, the director of our Broward delegation.
She
she
just
has a-
about, yeah. Can you unmute her?
She can
Hello,
unmute.
Ms. Knowles?
Hi,
It's not Knowles anymore. It's
Oh, that's true. I apologize. I was reading. It's not my fault. You have it right there. So you have to change it.
I actually have it changed. I logged in on a different one today. I am sorry. I apologize.
Well, give us your government name now, because we want to.
My government name is still Andrea Knowles.
Are you hyphenating? What's the
Andrea
hyphen?
Knowles Hill, HILL.
Okay.
Thank y'all. I want to just put in the chat and say hi to everyone. But our delegation is holding 2 public hearings before the 2023 legislative session. Info is on our website. I put it there. I just see I may have a typo instead of www. I have a comma, but broward.org/legislative. So December 21st at 10 a.m. Anyone can sign up at our website, 10 a.m. City of Miramar Commission Chambers. And on Friday, January 13th at Broward MPO, which is right off of Cypress and I-95 Andrews area. So anyone's welcome to sign up. It's public. Our legislators will be there. Our new chair is State Representative Patricia Hawkins Williams, and our vice chair is new to Broward, Senator Jason Pizzo.
And I do have a question. Is that going to be a hybrid meeting? In other words, because I'll be traveling, and so I won't be able to see you. Okay.
No, it's gonna be,
On the
well,
13th.
there'll be a live stream and it should come through our YouTube page, but everyone presenting will need to be in person.
Okay.
But as soon as that link is available, I can send that out. But right now, you may be able to watch it, but not participate virtually.
All right. I'll ask you, Madam Secretary or Vice Chair, if I have some concerns or issues to be there and express them on my behalf.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. We have a ambitious.
Mr. Obel.
Mr. Obel,
Obel.
is your hand up? Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see it. I thought I saw a cowboy ring or something else.
Madam Chair, I just want to take this opportunity to say a week or so ago, we had the opportunity to honor our past chair and current NAACP president for Greater Fort Lauderdale, Ms. Marsha Ellison, at the 2022 Social Justice Gala and Equity. For her over 20 plus years of work in this line of work. It was this body board here at Community-Based Connection that felt the need, given her work, to honor her. And it was well deserved. And the audience was so happy. We had a great time. For y'all who wasn't there, you missed a great time. Hope to see you next year. But it was a great time honoring our past chair and Marsha Ellison, our president.
You'll join me and
yeah, and
applauding
so,
our past
right.
chair and the current chair of the
Right.
president of the NAACP.
Congratulations.
Right.
And she
Right.
said our whole government name, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
even-
Thank you very much.
And I almost thought, I'm gonna say scratch that like a Gordon Weeks. I almost thought for a minute after cutting half of the song, National Negro Anthem. I thought I was gonna get Hayes or Paddle. Scratch that from the record. But not all worked out. The only thing main thing I learned from this, y'all, is whenever you ask Joe Hone to pray, she's gonna talk about your team. And pray for them. Well, you should pray for the Dolphins for losing.
Okay, your time is up. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? I'm going to wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah was, I think, started last night, and then we got Kwanzaa coming up right after Christmas. Please be safe, and look, please look in on somebody you haven't heard from that, not talking, not posting. This mental depression, this funk that our country is in is absolutely real. So don't text them when you can call them, and don't call them when you can go see them. So, enjoy the holidays. I wish you all the very best. I'm praying for a very prosperous and safe new year for you all. And I'll see you at our next meeting on Wednesday, January 11th, 2023. All hearts and minds are clear. That's Chief Evans said that yesterday. I couldn't believe it. She said, all hearts and minds are clear. The benediction, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move adjourned.
All right, we're adjourned. Bye-bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.